Hello and welcome to week 11 in the psychology of adulthood. And we introduced this chapter, I called it Plan B. And there's actually an interesting story behind that. And that is that the mother of my children, Wendy, her father, who has now passed away tragically in an auto accident, wrote out a philosophical document called Plan B, and it was his reflection as an older person on when things take a right-hand turn and don't work out the way you want. What is the philosophy behind Plan B? And this was distributed to people at his I won't say funeral, because it was more like a roasting. It was people telling jokes about him and stuff like that. It's a very, very powerful event. And his words of wisdom from this. And I've always found that to be intriguing, of that there are points in our life sometimes that come along and might really throw us onto a detour and cause us to embrace a plan B. Something that we really wanted to see happening may not, and there you go. I think maybe if I'm an interesting example of that, only because I was just thinking about examples right now. In the movie Up, and if you know this, I'm a pretty big fan of Disney cartoons and certainly Pixar. And you have Up, the couple you see during the introduction comes to find out that they want children, but she can't have them. And you see them changing they're preparing the room for an infant, and then they have to redesign that, and it turns into a plan B, which then again gets thrown off the rails by the fact that his wife passes away, I may assume from cancer or another disease process, and then plan C, maybe, is what the movie's all about. But that idea that something comes along, your plans are not going to work out, where are you going to go? And so for this assignment, the first thing I'm going to have you do is discuss, and people have already jumped in. I'm totally cool with that. People already jumped in with Chapter 11, discussing times in which you encountered those right hand, left hand, up, down sort of points in your life where you've had to change your plans, and sharing about those. This class has actually been tremendous in its ability and willingness to share information, and just to really, I'm sensing an incredible social cohesion in this class that I rarely get in online classes. I'm thrilled about that. I'm hopeful that everybody understands the necessity to keep things private and confidential that happens in this class, but certainly people have been sharing all over the place. So in this discussion, sharing things that have happened or observations you've made of others, my whole world prior to becoming an instructor was dealing with the happenings of acquired disabilities. So an individual becomes a paraplegic, and whatever they were doing before, they now have to find a new way, a new identity, a new sense of who they are. Those kinds of things. Acquired disabilities cause us to move in different directions, and those are dramatic. Now, they can be that dramatic, or they cannot be that dramatic. They can be minor turns. I failed in an effort that I was going to do. I was going to start my own business or something like that. Didn't go the way I wanted, so got rid of that and went in another direction. It's how did you sharing how you do that. Now, with that, I introduce in this chapter 2 resources. The resources have to do, let me look it up here. There is the Handbook of Adult Resilience, and then my friend Amy Morin's book, 13 Things Mentally Strong People Don't Do. Both of these resources have to do with developing fortitude into your personality, developing perspective, attitudes, skill sets, whatnot, avoiding certain things, as we'll look at with Amy's work, and that is so that we can exercise resilience when things come along and disrupt our plans, that they don't crush us. They don't, they disappointment, sadness, frustration, all of that, but we can survive them. We can be resilient. And resilience is one of those really mysterious characteristics of, we can meet somebody who's been through an awful situation and they are completely annihilated by it. They're disabled, they can't function, at one extreme. And then you can find another person who's been through a similar or very similar situation who seems to have the capacity to continue thriving. How? What is that difference? Is this mysterious thing that we call resilience. We don't really have our handle on that. Books like this that talk about, they look at successful people, all of whom have hit those roadblocks in the world. Amy describes her own in her book about what happened to her that caused her to realize what she needed to do, or in her perspective, what she needs to not do in order to be successful. Her and the authors for the Handbook of Adult Resilience have interviewed people and have found the keys to resilience seem to be individuals who are able to capture these things in their own lives. Knowing that, we can exercise our ability to enhance these capacities, to think about them, to write about them, read about them, exercise them in our lives in order to build up the defenses that we have in order to successfully navigate those difficult times in our life. I'm going to ask you to reflect on all of them. It's kind of a, maybe it's a monotonous assignment to write a little paragraph about each one of these and then develop a plan as to any sort of place. Some of this stuff you might be really good at. Some of this stuff might need to be addressed if you're really going to build yourself up in such a way that you become more resilient to, can I say, inevitable changes that will occur in your life. For many of us, some of those are very inevitable. So if you look at the course book, I'm going to take a look here right in this section. This is the Chapter 11 assessment part. You see the discussion there. Chapter 11 assignment called Resilience. And then on page 202, you see these lists. And the list for the Handbook of Adult Resilience includes psychobiology, positive emotions, self-regulation and emotional intelligence, self-complexity, grieving, faith, spirituality, and personal cosmology, and community. Now, clearly you have to go to the original source, read about these things, and then for each one of these 7 things, give me an assessment. Where are things with you with that? Where are you with this? Understanding this is sage advice. So you can't just brush these off. I hope you don't. Like sometimes the faith, spirituality person, I'm not, it's not religion. This is not really, it could be. For some people, they satisfy this with religion. But over and over and over, people who have successfully navigated difficult times have stated that this is an important part. Don't dismiss that advice. Every one of these, appreciating the complexity of yourself, grieving, the actual process of grieving, going through that instead of being stoic, exercising positive emotions instead of being negative. All of these, very important. These are, let's say, additive components. When we switch over to Amy's work, she approached this in a very unique way. And to tell you the truth, the first time she told me about it, I was like, wow, I'm not really into guides that tell me what not to do. It's what to do. But in every one of these statements that Amy has put together, there's, of course, what do you do instead of this? But her framing of it has really, really caught on. This is her thing now. She speaks on this. She writes other books on this. I think there's one now, the Successful Teenagers, kind of thing. She's a thing. She's out there doing this and really changing people's lives. So in her list, which is a lot longer, you're looking at things, maybe habits of thinking that you might have that are ultimately detrimental to your capacity to be resilient. So let's take a look at those here. We say, don't waste your time feeling sorry for yourself. Don't give away your power. Don't shy away from change. Don't focus on things you can't control. That's huge. Don't worry about pleasing everyone. Don't fear taking calculated risks. Don't dwell on the past. Don't make the same mistakes over and over. Don't resent other people's success. Don't give up after the first failure. Don't fear alone time. Don't feel the world owes you anything. And don't expect immediate results. And I don't know about you, but I can see myself in times where I've struggling with many of these. Immediate results. Wow. I do something, I want immediate results, particularly in this day and age of so many things that are immediate. It's really hard to wait for things to ripen and develop over time. And so the reflection in this week's assignment is rather personal. Now you can get as personal as you want. This is just going to me. But, looking at each one of these and saying, is this something, is this one of my Achilles heels? Is this one of my weaknesses? I'm in a difficult time. I'm going to be the one that's going to be jealous of everybody else. I fail at something, let's say, and I look at my classmates and I get jealous of them. And that anger and frustration overpowers me, makes me feel negative, kind of thing. That's not the best way to approach failure. There's other ways and, things that you could do instead, focusing on the plan to figure out what I did, what's in my power to change this situation, not blaming other people, all of these things, they actually correspond to an opposite reaction on your part to make sure you're not doing these things. So I'm asking for you to a brief reflection, couple sentences, maybe a little paragraph, however much you want to write on each one of these. So your paper is going to be, the first section is going to be on the adult resilience, and it's going to do all 7, and then the next one's going to be on Amy Morin's book. It's going to do all 13. And you know what I say? Go get Amy's book. Go get it. I have it. I've read it. It's remarkable. Her story's remarkable. Her explanation of each one of these things is remarkable, and how she went through each one of these things during the tragedy in her life. So that's it for this week. That's the assignment. So you have the discussion on your own reflections about how things have gone when you have come across those crossroads, and then a description of your resilience, and then a plan. How do I want to address some of these things? Am I going to read something? Am I going to journal about something? I want specific. Nothing like, I'm gonna stop doing that. That's, we need more than that. You can even, if you want, there might be areas in here that say, I'm good. I don't do that. I'm healthy in that way. Then it comes to one, I kind of get caught up in this and stuff like that. Put the plan right there. You don't necessarily have to wait and put that in a section at the end. Just for every area that you sort of could work on, put the plan in there. Put it plan right after you described that particular area. That's fine as well. In fact, that's probably how this should be done. So each one of these things sort of becomes a goal. Some of them are accomplished. Others require you to do some work on them. So embrace this. to the degree that it is a personal change, personal development kind of process to go through this. Make it as important, as big as you want. Make it as impactful as you want. But get it done. And that's it for this week. Have a great week, and I will see you next time.